What's going on, guys? It's great to see you again. Today we're going to discuss the 100 to 400mm lens from Fujifilm, which has been the go-to super telephoto zoom lens for both enthusiasts and professionals for years now. But that is precisely part of the discussion today. Is it still the go-to, or rather, is it still relevant today? Let's discuss. Now, why do I say that? Well, because this lens has been released in 2016, which makes it 7 years old now, and technology evolves pretty rapidly nowadays. And also Fuji has released a couple of other lenses in the meanwhile, which obviously have newer, more modern technology inside them, like the 70 to 300, which is much lighter and cheaper, or the 150 to 600, which obviously offers more reach even at pretty much the same price. So why would you still go for this one? Well, I think there are still good reasons to do so. But first, I want to thank everyone who has already subscribed to the channel. We have very recently hit 2,000 subscribers, which is a pretty cool moment for me. Thanks a lot. And if you haven't subscribed already, now's the time to do so. Okay, let's back up a bit. I've had this lens for 1.5 years now, and it has been a pretty nice experience. It has allowed me to dip my toes into wildlife photography, which I am a fan of, and I also built a bird feeder just to have some models to shoot around me. And it was quite successful, I'd say. At first they were a bit skittish to come in the feeder, especially because there are some cats around, but then they started to come literally all the time, every single day. If you spend enough time watching the bird feeder, you will see them. Also, this is all handheld, and as you can see, it's pretty well stabilized. There is a little bit of movement, but it's quite natural. But if you want it even more stabilized, you can do that in post and it looks great. And it's just really cool to have this kind of reach, and for now I believe it's one of the only things smartphones can't do that well yet. Otherwise it pretty much looks like they're taking over the entire camera market, right? But yeah, that's a whole different discussion for another day. And not only the reach, but the optical quality you get from this lens is quite great. Even in 2023, 2024, the year does not change what this lens is capable of, and thankfully for us, I'd say technology advances very fast, yes, but not nearly as fast for optical stuff like lenses compared to your camera body, your smartphone, your computer, etc. This has been the case for a long time, and it continues to be the case. So let's take a closer look. What Fuji made here is a very high-end lens with very few flaws, if any, really. It's a very robust metal build quality with weather resistance and built like a tank, essentially. On it we find the zoom ring, of course, the aperture ring, which is unmarked, but not really an issue. And I am a big fan of Fuji aperture rings on their lenses, although this one feels a bit easier to accidentally move than others. So yeah, keep that in mind. We also find a zoom lock button to prevent zoom creeping. As far as buttons go, we have pretty much everything we could need. A switch between the full range of focus and 5 meters and beyond only. This would help make the focusing quicker and also to prevent the camera from focusing to a close branch or something. If you're shooting a bird through obstacles, let's say, this button turns on the aperture ring or puts it to auto, and then you can either leave it in auto or control it from your camera. And then we have the OIS button, and it's always nice to have a physical trigger for it. This lens has 5 stops of OIS, which performs indeed very, very well. We also have a tripod color on this lens, about which we'll talk in a second. The filter thread for this lens is 77mm, which is a pretty nice and standard size. So that means it's gonna be easy to find filters of this size for your lens. Fuji provides us with this big lens hood, which is quite nice, very nice build quality, although it's plastic obviously. You also have this window for filters to adjust your variable in the filter or whatever. So why you might want to use this lens is to protect the front end of your lens, obviously the glass, and also it will shade the front end element from sun quite well because it's quite big. How you install this is it's got a thread lock, and there's a button here. You just press it and then unscrew. The length of the lens is 211 millimeters while retracted, or 270 while fully extended. With the lens hood mounted as well, you can add about 10 centimeters. The lens also comes in a nice velvety pouch to keep it safe from scratches. I don't want to spend too much time on the specs and numbers because you can find that out with a simple Google search, but what we have here from Fujifilm is a red badge lens, and that means top of the line build quality and optical quality, and usually spec'd more towards professionals. And that translates into a pretty hefty weight as well at 1400 grams or just under. That is on par with some full frame lenses, so there goes the small and light crop sensor lenses out the window, I guess. No, this is not that at all. But if you do want that, you get the 70-300 as I was mentioning. That one is in a completely different category, weighing only 788 grams. And that makes it tiny and super light by comparison. Not to mention that it only costs $799. And between us, there isn't that much of a difference between 300 and 400 if it's reach that you're concerned with. I actually have a video on that lens, and I would encourage you to watch it if you are in the market for a Fuji telephoto zoom lens, but if you can't be bothered to watch it, my conclusion in that video was that I would much rather recommend the 70-300 over the 100-400 to most people, simply because it's much easier to carry around, it's much cheaper, and the optical quality difference is not that obvious at all. The MSRP of the 100-400 is $18.99, but you can find it discounted nowadays for $14.99 or even like half the price if you go on the used market, and you can find quite a few. So yes, it's big, and yes, it's heavy, but this is some of the best optical quality Fuji has to offer, and it is built to be a no compromises kind of lens. And while you may get some comparable results with the 70-300, for example, that one is not the sharpest at 300, where supposedly you want to use it if you want this kind of reach, while the 100-400 is pretty much sharp across the range. So yeah, this is the no compromises kind of a lens that you can get from Fuji. And besides, with that 100 extra millimeter, you don't just get a bit more zoomed in, but you also get more background blur and more compression. So there's that to keep in mind as well. So I just heard a woodpecker, and I don't know if you can hear it, but it's still audible. So we'll try to find it, and I'll try to take a picture of it, of course. See ya. Another thing to keep in mind with such a zoom range is it's gonna be hard for you. Oh, I just found it. It's flying around. There is at least one, but usually I noticed that they fly in pairs, so at least two of them. Anyways, we lost it for now, but what I wanted to say earlier is that when you have this kind of a zoom range, so remember this is a 600 millimeter equivalent in full frame, it's kind of hard to find your subject when you're all the way zoomed in. It takes a lot of practice, but what I would suggest to you is zoom all the way out and then try to slowly zoom in on the subject if you can. If not, well, yeah. Hold on, I'll bring you closer to me. I don't know if you just saw it, but I did. Okay, did you see them? Okay, I doubt we got perfect shots by any stretch of the imagination, but we did get some, so yeah, I'll show you in a second. And talking about size and weight, when you mount this on a tripod, because of the tripod color, the camera is perfectly well balanced, which can prevent your front heavy lens from tipping over. And with the color, you can also very quickly switch it into vertical mode, which needless to say is not just for TikTok, right? And also you can just carry it around more easily holding it by the collar. So there sure is a degree of practicality with all this extra weight. And as I was saying, optically speaking, I can't fault this lens. Is quite superb across the range. So let's take a look at some of my favorite shots that this lens allowed me to capture. being a bit of an older lens, the focus system might be a bit outdated, right? Well, actually not really. It's got dual linear motors which work really well, and I don't think the focus on this will be a problem for anyone. Sure, overall the entire Fuji focus system may not be on par with, let's say, Sony's or Canon's, but still, it's working quite well. And if you can't get a good shot with this, it's not the camera or lens you need to worry about. The image stabilization in this lens is quite nice. It's got 5 stops of image stabilization, and especially at 400 zoomed all the way in is very much noticeable, and it's the difference between usable and very much unusable shots and results. So yeah, it's very nice to have it. And in combination with a newer body which has in-body stabilization as well, like the X-T4 that I have, it works even better. So yeah, you can only expect better results for newer cameras like the X-T5, XH2. So great news, you don't necessarily need a tripod to use this. And that is indeed quite important to me, because most of the time I don't use a tripod. I don't like to take a tripod with me if I'm not going to spend hours and hours in a location. So yeah, sure, your arms might get tired after a while, but it's a good exercise. And lastly, some people would invoke the experience that you get with such a lens, or the Fujifilm system overall. And there's something to be said about that for sure, but I wouldn't necessarily put it on the first place on what's important. Some of it I've covered already. It's very practical and tactile and everything. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I'm sure you get it. It's kind of like an analog feel, but with a digital result. Some people love it, others couldn't care less, but if you are a Fuji shooter, I'm willing to guess that you do care about that. So let me try to sum it up as accurately as I can. I think the 100-400 definitely still has a place in the Fujifilm lineup and is a solid choice for both enthusiasts and professionals alike. You can get some truly amazing shots with this one, and I don't think you would regret buying it. But just know that if you are getting this and expecting a massive image quality improvement over something like the 70-300, it might not be the case, but there are some other factors and benefits at play here that come with such a pro grade lens, and yes, it will give you that extra edge. There are other comparisons to be made for sure. For example, the Fuji 150-600, which undoubtedly is a nice lens, but it's 5.6 to f8, which means low light won't be your friend. Also, it's bigger and heavier, but it does zoom internally, so pros and cons. Also, both of these lenses are compatible with the 1.4 and 2 times teleconverters if you need even more range. You can also look outside the Fuji lineup, the Sigma 100-400 for example, but again it's a little bit slower than the Fuji with an aperture from f5 to 6.3. However, at half the price, that can be quite a negligible difference, and Sigma does produce some beautiful lenses for sure. I hope this was helpful and I didn't confuse you even further if you're trying to make a choice. Let me know in the comments below if you agree, if you disagree, if there's something you want to add. Oh, and one last thing, if you are interested in this very lens, do let me know, as it might be up for sale when you are seeing this video, as I am contemplating to switch my entire camera system to a different brand. More on that later, so do subscribe if you want to see what I might be changing to. That's it for today, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I think we're good.